Okay, now we are doing Sutra 43. Smrti Parishuddha Svarupa Sunyavarta Matra Nirbhasa Nirvitarka. Smrti Parishuddha Svarupa Sunyavarta Matra Nirbhasa Nirvitarka. Of memory, on clarification, own form, essential nature, self-awareness, devoid of, as if object, real meaning, true knowledge of the object, only presenting, shining with, appearing as, a state of samadhi characterized by absence of vitarka. On the clarification of memory, when the mind loses its essential nature, subjectivity as it were, and the real knowledge of the object alone shines through the mind, Nirvitarka Samadhi is attained. The savikalpa stage of samadhi, which has been dealt with in the previous sutra, prepares the ground for the Nirvitarka stage. The confused state of the mind in which different kinds of knowledge are mixed up has been gradually replaced by a clarified state in which the three kinds of knowledge are seen separate and clearly distinguishable. This clarification is called Smrti Parishuddhi, or the present sutra. Smrti Parishuddhi, in the present sutra. Why is this resolution of knowledge present in the mind of the yogi called clearing up of memory? To understand the reason for the use of the word smrti in this connection, the student should recall Section 1, Sutra 6, in which the vrittis or modifications of the mind are classified under 5 heads, and smrti or memory is one of these. If he has understood the basis of this classification, he will see at once that the modification of the mind in Nirvitarka Samadhi comes under smrti or memory. As the yogi's mind is cut off completely from the external world, the modification cannot come under right knowledge or wrong knowledge. As he is not asleep, but fully conscious, it cannot come under sleep. As he is performing samyama, not on any imaginary thing, but on a definite thing of which the reality it to be known. The modification cannot come under imagination. The modification is really of the nature of memory, because it is a reproduction of the mind of a thing which has been experienced before. That is why Patanjali calls the process of clearing up as clarification of memory. When the memory has been clarified, the mind is ready for the next step, reducing the self-awareness to the utmost limit. This mental process, which is called Svarupa Sunya, has been explained in dealing with Section 3, Sutra 3, and it is not necessary to go into this question here. But 2 facts may be pointed out in this connection. The first point we should note is that the dissolution of the mental self-awareness can come only after the resolution of the composite and complex knowledge with regard to the object into its 3 clearly defined constituents. This is clear from the word parishuddha, which means on the clearing up of. The second point to which attention may be drawn in the significance of the word iva after shunya, the word iva means as if, and it is used to signify that though the mind seems to appear to, the word iva means as if, and it is used to signify that though the mind seems to disappear, it is still there. The very fact that the object is shining in it points to the presence of the mind. It is only its subjective nature which has disappeared in the object, as it were, thus bringing about a fusion of the subjective and objective, which is necessary for attaining the samadhi state. It is this fusion which brings about the disappearance of the other 2 constituents, shabda and jnana, leaving the pure knowledge or svarupa of the object alone to fill the mind. The object is then seen in its naked reality. The use of the word nirbhasa, which means shining, for describing the filling of the mind with the svarupa or real knowledge of the object follows naturally from the simile used in Sutra 41 for illustrating the fusion of subjective and objective. The mind, though itself imperceptible, like the transparent jewel, yet shines with the light of true knowledge of the object. The use of the word Nirvitarka for the state of samadhi in which there is no vitarka also requires some explanation. One can understand the use of the word savikalpa in the previous sutra because the state of samadhi is accompanied by vitarka. But why use the word nirvitarka for a state in which there is no vitarka? Simply to indicate the nature of the state which has gone before. When one says that his mind is unburdened, it means not only that there is no burden on it now, but also that it was burdened before. The use of the word nirvitarka in this sutra means, therefore, that the state indicated is arrived at after passing through the savitarka state and is merely the consummation or culmination of the previous state. The consciousness is still functioning at the same level and in the same vehicle, though it has reached the utmost limit as far as knowledge with regard to that object on that plane is concerned. Any further change in this state can only be a repetition of itself as explained in connection with Section 3, Sutra 12. It is only by the practice of nirodha that consciousness can pass on into the next vehicle and a new series of changes at a higher level can begin. An interesting question that may arise in the mind of the student is, who brings about the fusion of subjective and objective and also the further transformations which take place in the further stages of samadhi? Up to the point where vitarka is present, the transformations may be supposed to take place through the agency of the subjective mind, which is still active. But who provides the guiding and propelling force after the subjective mind has merged in the object? Obviously, the Purusha, who is present all the time in the background and who is the Lord of the mind, as pointed out in Section 4, Sutra 18. Let's go there, because I want to see what that says. All right, Section 4, Sutra 18. Section 4, Sutra 18. The modifications of the mind are always known to its Lord on account of the changelessness of the Purusha. All right. The mind itself is inert, and it is the constant presence of the Purusha in the background which endows it not only with the capacity to perceive, but also the will to change. The mind is always an instrument. The real drashta and the karta is the Purusha always. So when the lower mind merges with the object in Nirvitarka Samadhi, it is the Purusha working in his higher principles who really is in charge and is ultimately responsible for the continuous and delicate transformations which take place in the further stages of Samadhi. In fact, throughout the continuous unfoldment which takes place in yoga up to the point of attaining Kaivalya, it is the Purusha who has to be considered as guiding the evolution. It is true that this view is not in conformity with the conceptions of Samkhya philosophy, in which the Purusha is considered to be a mere drashta spectator. But yogic technique, as pointed out elsewhere, is not based solely on Samkhya, and without assuming a guiding role for the Purusha, this technique would be unintelligible. This is not the place, however, to enter into this philosophical question. Okay. Sutra 44, but let me take a drink of water first. Sutra 44. Ettayeva savikara nirvikara cha shukshma visaya vyakyata Vyakyata. Etayeva savikara nirvichara, is it ka or ch? Savichara, nirvichara cha, sukshma, vishaya, vyakyata. Okay. By this, even alone itself, samadhi involving vichara or reflection, see Sutra 17 and section 1, section 219. Samadhi not involving vichara, and samadhi involving still more subtle objects described or explained. By this, what has been said in the two previous sutras, samadhis of savichara, nirvichara, and subtler stages have also been explained. The difficulty of comprehending samadhi, even in the lowest savitarka, nirvitarka stage, in spite of the fact that we are living in a world of names and forms and are familiar to some extent with the working of the concrete mind, should make it easy to understand why Patanjali has not dealt with the higher stages of samadhi in detail and has disposed of the whole subject in 2 sutras. Sutra 44 merely points out that the mental processes in savichara, nirvichara, and other higher stages of samadhi are analogous to those of savitarka, nirvitarka samadhi. For instance, the samadhi in relation to sukshma vishayas, or subtle objects, begins with samyama on the outermost aspect of the object, which is the most complex, and ending with the isolation of the object in its real state, which is the simplest. It may be mentioned here that the progressive involution of consciousness in matter is generally accompanied by the increasing complexity of the functions and the reverse process of release of consciousness from the limitations of matter means simplification of functions. An example will serve to throw some light on this general principle. The process of perceiving an external world requires the agency of sense organs on the physical plane, there being a separate sense organ for contacting each bhuta. But on the higher planes, on the higher spiritual planes, perception takes place through a single faculty, which is called pratibha, and which performs the functions of all the 5 sense organs in an integrated manner. A clear grasp of this fundamental principle will help the student in understanding the role of samadhi in this process of unveiling the subtler and more profound aspects of objects in the manifested universe. Samadhi does nothing more than reverse the involution of consciousness, and this evolution or unfoldment of consciousness automatically reveals the subtle aspects of these objects. What the yogi really does is to sink deeper and deeper into his own consciousness. This brings into action the more comprehensive faculties of the increasingly subtler planes, which alone can reveal the subtler aspects of objects. What the intellect may strain to the utmost to understand without much success becomes self-evident in the light of these higher faculties. That is why Patanjali has not tried to deal with matters which are really beyond the comprehension of the brain-bound intellect. Okay, one more. Sutra 45. Sukshma visayatvam kalinga pari avasanam. Sukshma visayatvam kalinga pari avasanam. The state of samadhi concerned with subtle objects and the last stage of the gunas, extending up to. The province of samadhi concerned with subtle objects extends up to the alinga stage of the gunas. If different objects are subtle to different degrees, how can these degrees of subtlety be classified? The different degrees of subtlety can be classified in the most comprehensive manner by assigning them to the planes on which they exist. But for reasons which have been pointed out in dealing with Section 1, Sutra 17, Patanjali has adopted a functional and not a structural basis for classifying phenomena, and so the degrees of subtlety have been classified according to the stages of the gunas given in section 2, Sutra 19. As the subject has been dealt with thoroughly in that context, it is not necessary to discuss it here. It may, however, be pointed out that according to Samkhya, all objects are the result of different combinations of gunas, and so the classification of objects in 4 categories, according to the 4 stages of the gunas, is perfectly logical. The last stage of the gunas is called a linga, and so naturally, the limit of subtlety corresponds with the alinga stage. So we're going to stop for now. The next sutra is 46, and I will read it briefly, as I am in the habit of doing. They, stages corresponding to subtle objects, constitute only samadhi with seed. And then 47 is, on attaining the utmost purity of the Nirvikalpa stage of samadhi, there is the dawning of the spiritual light. Oh, I can't wait to get there. So wonderful. Okay. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time. Bye.